Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition here on Quantum Planet World of the Cosmic History Codes. My name is Davyd Farrell. I'm your co-host for today, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful teacher and guide in the Stellar Nations pathway, Leslie Shankman. Hi, Leslie. How are you doing?
I'm good. Percolating.
Right, I think percolating is the word. We are recording this episode today on Thursday, the 22nd of February. I'm timestamping it because there is an important conjunction happening today. Venus and Mars are joining hand in hand in Aquarius, having just passed over their fellow bedfellow Pluto in the last week or so. So we are very much into the energy of Pluto, Aquarius, but also Chiron has been conjuncting the North Node in the last few days. So we are also into the energy of Chiron. So very, very interesting energies at this time. But today, myself and Leslie are going to be doing a bit of a deep dive on the stars that are around the point of the Saturn Cazimi that is going to take place on February 28th. Now, we've had already one very powerful Pluto Cazimi, which of course me and Leslie did an episode on. But before I hand over to Leslie to take us through the presentation she has about this for today, I just want to put into our audience's awareness a few key times about what is happening on February the 28th, because it's quite a piece, and all of this is very much connected to something else that we have coming up starting on February the 28th, which is a 14-day oak immersion. And the oak is very connected to Saturn, to the Sun, and to Mercury, all three of which are playing a big part in this day, February the 28th. So the little facts and figures. Mercury is conjuncting the Sun here in Central Time America at 2:42 in the morning. So universal time, that will be 8:42 a.m. universal time. That is Mercury conjuncting the Sun. A little bit later that morning, Saturn is conjuncting Mercury. Here in Mexico, it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, so that will be 3 p.m. UTC. And then even later in the day, which is the piece that we're looking at, predominantly, but not exclusively, is that Saturn is going to conjunct the Sun, thus the Saturn Cazimi. That takes place at 3:25 here, CST in Mexico, which of course will be 9:25 p.m. UTC. So just wanted to put those little bits and pieces into everybody's awareness as a sort of a preface to the power of this day, February the 28th. And of course, this is a leap year. So February the 29th in the Mayan calendar is a day out of time. So we've got some very, very weird time things going on, which is also very connected to Saturn and to the oak. So that's my little preface for the piece. I'm going to hand over now to the real expert in this situation, who is, of course, Leslie. So Leslie, big day, big energies. How do you want to set this one up for our audience?
Well, I did a slideshow again because there's so much information and we just want to try to, stay centered and go through it. And I'm going to put those slides up and we can get started.
All righty.
Okay, here we are. Just a reminder that all the information that we're going to be speaking of is coming from a 2-volume set called The Stellar Nations, and it's the chronicles of our cosmic history as told from the star Antares, which is a 7th dimensional star. And it's the chronicles of the Milky Way galaxy. And Antares, which is at the heart of the Scorpion, has the Akashic records for our cosmic history. And the apprehenders of this information, who put the books together, Dr. Beatrix Saziel and Aniko Gresco, were asked to expand their consciousness to Antares in 2005 and 6. And they did that and were taken through the stellar pathways of 13 stellar nations. And basically, Antares is a 7th dimensional star. So that means that things are frequency or sound. And then these particular chronicles are fleshed into myth. But those myths and stories, when we hear them, wake us up. Because actually, the stars are the maps and mirrors of our light body. Because aspects of our souls are actually living on the different stellar worlds. And you might even think of a given star as a cell in our light body. And we are inhabiting certain stars based on our resonance with what's being learned on that star in terms of what stellar nation is going through it. There's things we want to learn. And it's interesting because what we're learning on the stars really are, well, we're mirroring down here in the 3rd dimension what we're learning on the stars. But as we go along, we'll continue to see this. So I think I want to start with where we left off, really, with a Pluto Cazimi, and that's an awareness that we all need to hold as a context, because it really helps us move out of just a planetary consciousness towards a galactic or stellar consciousness. And what we learn from the Stellar Nations books is that we've got the possibility to experience a dimensional shift on a planetary level, because we're at a time when the whole galaxy is experiencing a rearrangement, a reattunement, a quality shift, literally. And that's related to 3 grand cycles concurrently ending. And that's the 26,000-year precessional cycle. It's the 230 million year orbit around the galactic center. And then it's the entire Milky Way galaxy going around the great central sun. So we're being called now, literally, as humans on Earth, to establish a bridge of consciousness between the planetary and the galactic. What does that say, Davyd? It's behind my picture. The galactic what?
Where is that, sorry?
We're being called to establish a bridge of consciousness between the planetary and the galactic, right here.
Galactic processes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because the Milky Way galaxy has been operating as a closed system for many, many epochs, eons, with our sun as orchestrator, but that's changing in a way now. We're going to go through that. And then there's further information about this whole process that we're going through, this galactic rearrangement, in a book called Pleiadian Perspectives on Human Evolution by Amara Kwan Yin. And she points out that the creation cycle we've been in is an evolutionary spiral of self-discovery and exploration. So this is where we've been working with polarities very purposely. It's part of this creation cycle. We've been asked to explore all the potentials of consciousness, light and dark. But with this galactic rearrangement, it's literally like one of these spiral arms is about to break so that the next spiral arm can pull us up. And what we're moving to is an evolutionary spiral of self-mastery and completion. So what that means is it's a time for us to choose spiritual mastery and take the responsibility to create and to co-create reality. And we'll see how the stars and this Saturn Cazimi can really help us understand this.
Right. And just to reaffirm that the Saturn Cazimi is happening at 9 degrees of Pisces. So
yes, I will show that.
Yeah.
So as I alluded to or said, we've been in a closed system for a very long time, meaning that we've really only experienced things through solar and planetary influences. Our sun has literally been like an orchestrator who's let in the different information of the broader stellar worlds, the pieces of us, the bigger light bodies that we are, has let those codes in through the lens of the sun. But that all changed when we came deeper into the photon belt, and particularly starting in 2007, which is exactly why the grand stellar delegation of the Stellar Nations approached Bayanonico in 2005 and asked them to go to Antares and catalog all this, because the stellar channels have been opening ever since. The sun isn't acting in the same way as an orchestrator. And we're now being asked to recode with these enormous stellar powers. And that's so that we can be active agents in the realignment of the solar system towards the great central sun. So what we talked about with the Pluto Cazimi is that our sun, which in the books is known as Solana, is entering a gate of rebirth offered by Pluto. Because we know Pluto is an agent of transformation that takes us to the depths of hell, but on the other side of hell is rebirth. If you make it, all right? So a little,
Pluto is all-encompassing, and he's Hades. He's the lord of the underworld. But if you can make friends with the lord of the underworld, then I think you're going to be okay. But that's quite a journey, and I think that Pluto
yes,
is here to
right.
to show us how to navigate that journey, which we're all going through right now. Pluto is very active, and of course, in the first few degrees of Aquarius, right, Leslie, this is setting up the scene for what is to come in the age of Aquarius, and we need to enter through this process. I believe it's actually really important that we are being cleansed. We are doing our limpia, so to speak, of our soul, so that we can enter this new era free of the lower frequencies of the past. I mean, it's not pleasant, but it is incredibly important.
Yes, and we'll see this. That's part of the point I do want to make as well. You're exactly right. But think about it. When we spoke of the Pluto Cazimi, um, our sun was actually, well, first of all, admiring our sun, because it's like the Cazimi's, you could think of mind meld. The sun is going right with the planet. But we'll see in a way that the sun is revisiting everything that it needs to revisit. But then that again is a mirror for us, because our sun is a fallen angel star. It was an eighth Pleiadian star of the angel stellar nation. And at the start of another Aquarian age, long, long ago, it was in the analogous developmental age of being an adolescent. So the Aquarian energies just struck it with such an excitement of like, hey, I want to go, I want to do, I want to break out. And eventually the sun did leave its orbit. It had so many roiling, feelings that it managed to break out of its Pleiadian orbit, which was actually totally thrilled about at first. But there's kind of a law. When you break out of your orbit or leave what's your alignment with your fate or your divine destiny, you start losing some energy and consciousness. So you don't have the same advantages that your dreams had when you were in your orbit thinking about doing something different.
Could we
So
say, Leslie, then that the sun is exercising its ability to use its free will in our universe, but like us humans, of course, we are the mirror of that, we're also experiencing the side effects of exercising free will.
yeah, hang on to that because I'm going to get there.
Okay.
It's very tied into Saturn and the Cazimi,
Okay.
but you're exactly right. So, and we're just doing a little history now, so we have the context. So our sun then was bereft and alone in a very cold, dark space for a very, very long cosmic time, caught in a clouded astral fog, sort of comatose, sort of ashamed. But then by an act of grace in another period of coming into a photon belt, he heard the yearnings and whispers of his Pleiadian family, and he started to wake up, and he wanted to realign with his fate. So he was actually given grace, a chance to lift himself back up, a chance to walk the path to finding his full light again, his divine destiny. And that chance involved creating and evolving the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy. And then in Solana's enactment of creating the galaxy, he actually made each planet a member of his Pleiadian family or an aspect of himself. So it's very interesting. We'll bring some of this in this conversation, but over time as we talk, because it lends a little bit of a different perspective to start on. It brings it a little more personally and psychologically, perhaps, to us, because of course this is all mirroring us. So our sun's been orchestrating the galaxy as a way to work back towards his divine destiny, to the full light of his being. And with this cosmic rearrangement upon us, with all these cycles ending, our sun wants to return to his Pleiadian family, but now he's the father of the Milky Way galaxy, and he can't just leave us. He needs us to go back with him, okay?
You know
So,
what, Leslie, can I just add a little comment in here?
yes,
Because we've been looking at the sun's activities, right, with the solar flares recently. And what I've come to realize over the last 2 months is that the sun doesn't release solar flares willy-nilly. Everything it does is super precise, and it throws out the solar flares to hit us here on Earth with some of these major planetary conjunctions, particularly I notice the ones to do with Mars. But what I've observed is that the sun is doing everything in an incredibly precise well-timed way so that the Earth gets hit by certain flares or energies at certain times, certain amounts of light. But there is nothing random or willy-nilly. It's very actually beautiful but powerful to witness this being acting consciously. And if we can perceive it and interact with it, we can actually have a communication with the intelligence of the sun and understand what it's trying to do. I had never perceived that before, Leslie, until the last 2 or 3 months. I just saw it probably, like the big nuclear reactor in the sky. But now I'm understanding what you're sharing with us is that we can communicate with this being as an eighth dimensional spirit being, which I think is
Well,
really
actually, the
incredible.
sun's on the higher level of the fourth dimension, I
Okay.
think. But here, just to extend your thought, if I'm telling you that our soul parts are on different stars, and like I'm on certain stars with you by mutual resonance and all, but we don't share all the stars. We have like different galactic faces or light bodies based on our the trajectory of our consciousness. So like it's our galactic DNA. But all of us we could almost say, wait, we're all involved with the sun. We're in this galaxy. We're a child of the sun, essentially. We can extrapolate then that we all have some soul aspect or consciousness living on the sun. It's an aspect of our light body. And now that higher aspect of us, or that aspect of us, is really keying up to enter the gate of rebirth. That's why, and I really admire the sun. It went right to Pluto first. Okay, we're starting in Aquarian age. I don't want to repeat it the same way. And then it's going to go to Saturn. So we're going to follow that. But the question becomes, that's why we have to build the bridge of consciousness from planetary to galactic, because we have to understand that, can we enter the gate of rebirth too? Can we be part of this process? Can we bring our galaxy and the Earth? I mean, that's what our sun dearly wants. I don't even know if our sun can be part of the rearrangement without us, because now we're all intimately involved. I mean, okay, let's keep going.
Makes a lot of sense, by the way, Leslie. And I'm also just thinking about the fusion of Earth and Gaia as the two beings that we are associated with here on the Earth. And they're also going through their process. And I think that if humans can understand anything, it's like the sun and our planet are going through a process where they're going to change. They are going through a rebirth process, and they've invited us to go with them. However, it's our choice. We either choose to go with them and have to step up in the same way that they are, or we choose not to, and then we fall into whatever the other option is. So this is, I think, a really important point that I wish to share, because I've been sat with this information for a while and understanding that is the imperative impetus that we are being given as humans at this time.
Yes, and everything you said reflects back on when we talked about the Pluto Cazimi. Many of those stars were in the bird stellar nation, which we're going to go over now, because the stars that we're going to talk about, or the star on Saturn, is in the bird stellar nation. So we'll get more deeply into that. But that is basically the intimate knowing and connection of ourselves with Gaia, that Gaia is our body. And of course, we have to realize that Gaia, as our body and a consciousness, we're her, she's us. But in the center of every planet and star, the Holy Spirit lives. And in Gaia, there's an iron core crystal holding the Holy Spirit, which is the 13th stellar nation, which is really the quantum field that connects everything. It's the breath and information from the divine mind, and every planet and star has a different divine programming, if you will. Like the divine mind has a different idea about its purpose, and then that radiates out to the surface. So it's like the information comes from all the aspects of the divine that work through the stars, comes down into Gaia, radiates out up to us. That's been happening forever. But now we've got an extra layer, especially increasing since 2007, where we're getting stellar rays, that kind of light and information directly. And it's hard because we have to know how to integrate it. So that's why I like this cosmology, because it's a map of how to integrate it. Okay, so now we're at the dawn of another Aquarian age, as we know. And I want to say that our sun, Solana, is adulting now, because he went to Pluto in Aquarius first, as I just said, and we saw. as the first step towards his rebirth, which is, brave, going into Pluto. And part of the cosmic history also, which we won't go into now, but Pluto was once a moon of Saturn. Now let's start focusing on Saturn, because this is about the sun's coming to Saturn on February 28th. And we have to understand, remember I said that our sun made the planets represent parts of his Pleiadian family. Saturn was, in his mind, his father Atlas. And so we had this father figure, the figure that says, this is what you have to do, son, the way that we've often felt Saturn. But now at the dawn of this Aquarian age, Solana has all these experiences. He's grown so much from orchestrating our Milky Way galaxy. He's realizing what his father Atlas was seeking to teach him was much more of a co-creative kind of stance, a way to be an agent in creation responsibly. His father kept saying to him, look, I can be relied upon, I can be built upon, and all your training is going towards learning that. It's not about making you stand still and hold all these static forces together in a boring way. This is anything but boring, because you're talking about being an active agent of creation here. And Solana's starting to wake up to that. So he comes to Saturn on this Cazimi day. And I feel like with these Cazimis, because he went to Pluto, he's going to Saturn on the 28th. He's going to have a Cazimi with Chiron on April 8th with the solar eclipse. He's going to have a Cazimi with Jupiter and then with Venus. So he's either visiting.
Don't forget, Leslie, he's also having a Cazimi with Mercury on the same day. He's having a Cazimi with
Well,
Saturn.
you're right. He is earlier, right? Exactly.
Having two conversations, but I think that's also an important point. I know it's not the focus of today, but just think about the energy of Mercury and to do with communication, and you start to get an idea of what is wanting to be communicated from everything you're sharing. And maybe the cat wants to communicate too.
The cat's crazy on this now. Okay, sorry, but that's part of it. Cats are coming back. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And if we speak of Mercury, at what was Mercury in our sun's mind? It actually wasn't one of the Pleiadian members of his family. It was more of a piece of his psyche. It was like a little bit of a channel between his family and him. It was a whisperer, a messenger, as we know Mercury to be. But very specifically, it was like, okay, I'm sitting Mercury here to travel close to me because I want him to keep bringing me messages about the truth of my family and who I am. So actually, when we read an Antares code, Bayanonico say that Mercury is always an amplified message in our for our incarnation. It's something to really listen to, because on our Antares code we'll have certain stars on Mercury, so they have a message. But I'm going to say with these,
that's really interesting. Actually, you've never said that before, and it's now making me look at my own Mercury, which is in a really powerful placement and has lots of stars, but through a new filter. So thank you for sharing. I think that is a really important.
Okay, well, our sun is on a mission, I would say, to clean out the closet, his shadows, basically, and to catch the wave of this incoming Aquarian age much differently with the wisdom of his experiences and with a different understanding and use of his free will. Sorry about my cat, but I guess we have to go with what's happening, right? That is the byword of everything.
But you know what? For some reason, my cat does the same thing. Well, not my cat, the cat that lives with me. I don't own her or anything, but she loves to come and sit deliberately in front of the camera whenever I'm doing live recording. So I feel the cats really want us to acknowledge that they are returning and want to be a part of our reality very strongly.
Well, my cat, this particular cat, only comes for certain recordings and certain people, and it's very interesting to see thematically what she relates to. So she must think this is important.
She's doing her Mercury piece for us, right? She's trying to communicate some sort of message as well.
Oh gosh, I should shut her out, I guess. But all right. So this whole idea of free will, as we enter this Aquarian age now, I think it's important to understand that we're being given opportunities to understand what we're calling our sovereignty. We're all waking up to the idea of sovereignty because we've been captive in many ways, actually, or our free will. But we need to wake up to it in the way that we can use it to affect becoming responsible co-creators versus going through the cycle that our son went through and leaving our path. So I think what we're being asked to understand is that divine will is the intention of the light that is within us. And we can say that our son thought of his father as kind of exercising a divine will, and that it was something he didn't feel good, like, oh, let me have my freedom, let me explore myself, as if divine will wouldn't bring him to himself. And I think, we have the same pattern. I mean, we can examine that in ourselves. We do things that we want to do. We're given free will. That's our way of learning. That's our creation cycle, actually. That's what we're supposed to do. But we're moving into a different creation cycle. So if we can understand that divine will is actually the intention of the light is inside us, it's our intention really to align with and live our divine destiny, which divine will is always working for the highest good. So we're kind of upping ourselves in the container. Does what I just said make sense? Do you need any clarification on that?
No, it's super clear for me. I mean, the understanding of divine will and free will is a really essential tenet in all of this Stellar Nations pathway, and understanding the difference between our divine destiny, which is always for our highest good because it's created by our higher self, but being given the freedom to exercise free will, which is, of course, what Lucifer wanted to give us down here on planet Earth. And so that we have the option to veer away from our divine will. But that's the journey we have to go on, right? So that we understand that the ultimate best option is our divine will. But we need to exercise free will, I feel, in order to come back to that understanding, which is
yes, but
really
we're at that
important.
tenuous place now. And I was actually gobsmacked this week to realize this, because there's an inherent, even if you don't have it consciously, like a little bit of like, I don't know, holding on to yourself, your ideas. When I read in one of the books, divine will is the intention of the light inside of us, I'm like, oh my God, this is the light I'm yearning for. This is the light we're all yearning for. It's right inside of us. And it's not some thing out there to push away, like our son thought of his father, Atlas, or we've thought of Saturn for a long time, and particularly perhaps because it was in Capricorn and it was more of a box or a hierarchy. But now Saturn's coming into Pisces. So we can learn more about how to build our bridge of consciousness and with galactic awareness and move into what I'm talking about here, this subtle but not so subtle difference of understanding divine will in a friendly way as a container, not something that cuts us off. When we look at the stars. Okay, we can see here, this is the radix for today, or for the 28th, I'm sorry. And you can see in the 5th house there that we've got Saturn and the sun at 9 degrees 46 of Pisces. And then Mercury's just a few minutes past it. But as you said, Davyd, the sun met it immediately about 12 hours before, perhaps. So it's kind of a double Cazimi.
It's something like that. I mean, of course, Mercury moves a heck of a lot faster than Saturn does. So
Right.
the actual time difference is 12 hours, Leslie, almost exactly.
Yeah. So taking into effect everything we said about Mercury, and the sun kind of stopped in on Mercury, but we're focusing on Saturn here. And interestingly, there's only one star that we're going to talk about here, but it's quite a star. And it's in the Bird Nation again, which many of the stars in the Pluto Cazimi were. And the birds are all about us taking responsibility, really, for the planet. So the star is Deneb Adige, and let's meet it. But first we have to ask a little reflection on the birds, and that as a nation, it's a part of ourselves. How do the bird constellations reflect to us as humans? Because actually, part of the mission of the birds are to be messengers, are to reflect our consciousness to us. And then they fly in the sky, and there's many etheric lines of energy made by them. They actually etherically fly between 33 planets on the Milky Way galaxy, where the divine mind has different things going on with humans. And they actually bring to our planetary consciousness and then to our consciousness what's happening with these different human experiments. I should say on Earth, we've been asked to really do it all. We've been asked to clear all the karmic patterns of the Milky Way galaxy. And we've been asked to do that by cosmic humans living on Earth are asked to be chalices for all 13 of the stellar nations, which are essentially like archetypes or forms and frames of ways that we can have experience. And we've also been asked to bring into complementarity the masculine and feminine. So the idea is that if all these different influences could be balanced and harmonized, then we can come to a new level of understanding, which is really coming into more of a fifth, sixth dimensional perspective. So the birds, we saw this in the Pluto Cazimi. There's specific constellations in the sky that are named after birds. And if you take the flight path of a bird and follow these constellations, as Bay and Annika were shown, there's actually, it's an infinity symbol, and it's a reflection of the pathway that our consciousness travels as we're developing. First, we have the Aquia or the eagle, and a lot of those stars were on Pluto. And this is all about us being taken up for initiation to learn how to use power well to become leaders. But the definition of power isn't a power over, it's the ability to run divine frequencies so that we can be leaders by raising the consciousness, because we're running a divine frequency. And so those influences around us that are not resonant with that, there's a principle in science where lower frequencies usually entrain up to higher frequencies. So that's a definition of leader there. And then we've got, well, if you don't use your power well, there's a falling and a chamber of mirrors in the Raven constellation, kind of a galactic prison. And then there's the phoenix, we know, as a symbol of totally dying and letting it go in rebirth. And then there's going into the light with the dove. And then there's the Cygnus. And the star we're talking about today is the Cygnus, is on the Cygnus. It's the tail of the Cygnus constellation, the swan. So what we've got coming here is there's a whole aspect of, we've been through these cycle of consciousness, and coming to the Cygnus, we're being asked to kind of take all this from the alpha to the omega. The Cygnus is telling us many things, and it's 3 stars, but we're going to concentrate on Deneb. So the 3 stars of Cygnus are Alberia, which we saw in the Pluto, Sadra, which is the heart, and then Deneb, the tail.
Leslie, can I just make a short comment there, which I think is pertinent to what you just shared, which of course is that we're in a very Plutonian Chiron energy at the moment. And can you just go back a couple of slides and just show me the infinity again? Something just occurred to me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, of course, I have many of the Bird Nation stars in my chart, so this is fairly familiar for me. But what I see clearly with Corvus, Raven, Phoenix, and Dove is 3 aspects of the Scorpio energy, which of course is very Plutonian, very transformational, very death and rebirth. So we have the Corvus energy, which is very much looking at the shadow side of things. We've got the Phoenix rising, which is a transformational process. You have the Eagle, which is the ascended Scorpio. And then there's even another level above that in esoteric terms, which is the Dove, which is the ultimate ascended aspect of the Scorpio zodiac sign. So I think in many ways, even though it doesn't seem obvious, the bird nations are very connected to the energy of transformation, alchemy, and death and rebirth. And of course, this is all happening through the filter of the Pluto energy that we have in Aquarius right now, and Chiron. So I think what we're getting here is a merging of these three energies. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think you can. I think like what you've just said shows us that we know, not always consciously, but we ascribe these qualities to things. So what we're getting with the stellar nations is often just a connecting the dots of how we've sort of tried to seek through unconsciously.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to
It's
interrupt, but it just occurred
no,
to me
no,
that
you didn't at
very
all.
much the energy of the moment we're in, which is transformation, death, and rebirth for the sun, for the planet, and of course for them it has to be for us too. We're all interconnected, and what these stars and the stellar nations pathway is doing is showing us what is going on and how to work with the energy so that we don't get consumed by it, but that we can transform it so that we can enter into the energies of the more Cygnus qualities of the bird nation.
Right. And then the Cygnus swan also actually it's the spread out swan, and that constellation is right over Avalon. So there's a connection with the whole idea of the goddess. The heart of the Cygnus is right over Avalon. So, and that's what it looks like, the spread out. And I'm skipping the last slide because I realized I'm telling you it's over Avalon, and I realized I forgot to take some voice I had on that slide out. So let's go right to Deneb. Deneb is at 540 of Pisces, and the orb is 4.5 degrees. It's got a big orb because the sun is meeting Saturn at 946, but it's still within orb. And what we find with all three stars on the Cygnus constellation is they all have, they're very creative energies because there's fairies and elves living on each star in different ways. And they do different things besides that. But very specifically on Deneb, it's really beautiful. There's three tribes here. There's fire elves, divine forester elves, and then fairies. Okay, we've got the fire elves, which we don't really know on planets. They're flame-like creatures, absolutely gorgeous. They're the gardeners of the stars. It's like they rake the surface of the stars. They nourish the star's fire surface so that the lights of the stars don't fade. They only really come to planetary worlds at the beginning or the end if there's a destruction of a planet. But then there's a community of divine foresters, the lords of the foresters on Deneb. And there's 9 master trees up there with 9 elves that live in them. And these 9 elves and these trees that they live within and basically are energetically are planters and caretakers of all the trees on the 33 planets that are in the Milky Way galaxy. And we've got the oak tree kind of standing at the center, the beech, the pine, the yew, which represents the whole family of evergreens. We've got the linden, the willow, the ebony, the walnut. And then I said apple plus because it's kind of a magic tree. It's a fruit tree. It looks like an apple tree at first, but it's got every kind of fruit on it.
I mean, as somebody who loves trees, those are all very well-known trees. And of course, I would expect to see the yew tree in there being the tree of eternity, the oldest living being on our planet. It is the Akashic record of everything that's happened here. But the oak, of course, is one very much in our awareness. And one of the reasons we're doing this is because the oak is connected to Saturn. So we're going to keep building this picture, I think, here, Leslie, with what is coming up with our oak immersion on the 28th of February, all very, very synchronized. Of course, not by us, but by the higher beings that include the oak itself. These are incredibly profound intelligences that we're dealing with here.
Well, when I laughed when I looked at this and knew that the oak came to you and said, it's time. I mean, it's starting on this date and it's with the Cazimi and it's with this star. You know, you didn't know this. I didn't know this till we looked at it.
No, didn't know any of that.
But what we need to know is, or we can know, and this is what Deneb tells us, and this is what we want to understand, that we can have this kind of galactic consciousness. We live in these worlds too, not just here. These are true energies. And these trees from Deneb are keepers of remembrances because trees live in cosmic time, not earthly time. Okay, so what we mean by living in cosmic time, this enables the trees to stand firmly as beholders through the eyes of numerous human lifetimes. And so the trees record everything. And then they whisper those tales of our stories from generation to generation back to us. So they smooth all the pearls of memories into the subtle layers of their annual rings. Trees remember our history in a way that they never lose consciousness, and they maintain a higher point of view all the time. Trees can help us humans remember their own completeness. So this is part of what our sun is merging with Saturn, and this is what we're being asked to understand now on this Saturn Cazimi. And I'm going to say that I think the Pluto and Saturn Cazimi are giving us certain messages to take seriously now and to make ourselves strong, because the other Cazimis are going to be getting more into the shadows of our galactic history, which basically is our shadow.
Mm.
So the
You know
other
what? Just to add something in here, when we were doing another piece for the upcoming oak immersion with the Ascended Master Zach, he did allude to, and this is just a small teaser, he said that the oak tree in its original form was actually humanoid. And it gave me more pause for thought that maybe as humans, we evolve into being to trees in the future. And then our future selves actually come back and seed with the energy that we grow into as the trees. And so humans and trees, I feel intimately connected, and none more so than the oak and the human being. So just a slightly psychedelic thought there to contemplate that perhaps our future selves are trees, and we go from the future time traveling into the past to seed the planets that we now live on with essentially parts of ourselves, which I think is actually really beautiful. I have no problem to be partly an oak tree. I think that's actually pretty cool. But
I think it's a beautiful thought, and actually Barbara Handclough has said something quite similar. So it's not totally psychedelic. Who knows what the mix of energy brings about, right?
hey, well,
But
the nature of the reality is way more psychedelic than the psychedelics are. So
yeah,
it's all
and we
psychedelic
also,
at the end.
yeah, right. It just reminds us maybe, right? And that's a plant right
Right.
there, right? Reminding us.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and actually what you just said might bear on this next point, maybe why trees have an empathy for the human, because each kind of tree as a species, and then each tree alone individually that exists, chooses a unique and specific emotional quality, and then it continuously filters out the atmosphere of the lower vibrations of that quality, of that
Yeah.
emotional quality. It literally like swallows those emotions in its bodies, and it transforms and neutralizes those emotions through its circulation and breathing. So trees are such servants to us, not only as holding our memories, but helping us, I mean, on the third dimension with all the emotions, we have no idea how much they do for us.
Well, just think about it practically, Leslie. Two major things. Without trees, we can't breathe. So we need trees to actually exist and to breathe. And also, if you think about the amount of rubbish that's been dropped on us from the skies, the trees are actually filtering and neutralizing most of the crap, excuse my French, that is being infiltrated into our system. So they are our guides, our guardians, and our protectors. Again, I re-emphasize the point that trees and humans have a very intimate relationship, which again, I think like you just said, maybe that's because some part of the trees are humans and some part of humans are trees. You know,
Anything's possible, I think.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of what we're moving into, like such a different relationship with creation.
And our own planet and
I
our own
think we can
environment. I
even
think
imagine it.
it's a big part of the reconnection process is remembering that us and nature are one and the same thing, and that our modern world has somehow given us this idea that we're separate and nature is something outside the front door that we can investigate at our own peril because it's full of scary animals and creatures and insects and things.
Yeah,
And actually, that's a load of BS, because what that whole narrative has disconnected us away from the ability that nature has to help us release the toxic emotions, which, as you just so beautifully said, the trees are here to help us with. So
right.
I think that's a really important point in the woke agenda that we need to hold in our awareness as well.
Okay, and we can also know that the etheric body of a cut tree or a destroyed tree stays holding all its memories until a new seed grows exactly in its place. And then it slowly implants the memories and wisdom that it's holding into that new tree. And we once, as humans, made an agreement with the elves, and we promised we would always plant a replacement tree whenever we cut one down. So I think part of this being on this Cazimi, and we saw this with Pluto too, with the bird nations. And remember, I said the birds are about reflecting our own consciousness to us. And the birds are also very much about us as part of the earth, because we formed the earth as evolutionary consciousness with the involutionary consciousness of the fairies and the elves. I mean, that's part of what helped us manifest. We're actually should know that we're co-creators with these levels of consciousness, and yet that level has withdrawn from us because we effectively don't recognize it. We haven't supported it for a long time. So continuing that idea, there's another place on Deneb. We've seen the fire elves and we've seen the tree elves. Deneb is this whole star, I should say, is the cradle of the fairy and elves. I mean, they live on other stars too and do different things, but this is like the master cradle of their energy. So the fairies are born on Deneb. And I'm just going to go through quickly, sort of paraphrasing something from the book, because it's a magical little trip into the birth of fairies, and it'll just kind of get us into that understanding. So there's very sacred moments with the birth of fairies. And Bayononico said it's like they were there and you could see into the miracle of a very soft, blurry light. And those lights concealed forms that were going to unfold, but hadn't yet. It's just there was a hint of that. And there was countless shades of green shimmering, and the green was evolving into different colors and flashes of light. And the actual radiating light of the star Deneb permeated all the flashing, shimmering lights from the inside. And then the lights outlined a special hollow, and into that hollow came a glittering of stardust, which is kind of sprinkled by an invisible celestial hand. And it's Ioto, who is the goddess aspect of us, of the cosmic human, is scattering colorful and iridescent fairy dust from her own dreams. Because remember, we're the dreaming humans. We have the right to be co-creators. That's what our son is, really now understanding that his father was trying to tell him. And that's what we need to understand. That's what I was trying to bring up before. And it's the new creation cycle that we're being asked to move into. So as all these sparks fall down from the dream of the goddess, they seem to start a dance in space. And chasing one after another, they arrange into a special form. They form into the shape of a great cone that has 7 shiny, colorful, iridescent circles, one on top of another. And the sparkling particles in this forming shape are like light balls, sort of like colorful soap bubbles. And they have such a sweet, fragrance that emanates from them. And then sounds start being born from the lights. And that creates a fascinating and heartwarming melody that just comes to life with all this. And where we are now, we're on the border between the visible and the invisible, but we're still like just at the mere possibility of creation. It's the moment right before birth or manifestation, say, of energy into something more condensed. And at that point, the space is permeated by a very exalted and very festive mood. And then suddenly the little bubbles dissolve and beautiful tiny fairies step out of them, arranged in these 7 rings, which are in the shape of a cone. And on the top, there's a fairy king and queen. And all those layers they go on to talk about, it looks like it's a hierarchy, but it's not at all. There's nothing hierarchical about it. There's deep joy in every aspect that each fairy is assigned to as a process of creation. One fairy may feel blue and sing out, and the flower turns blue. Someone else is taking care of the seed. Someone else is making sure the dew arrives to the seed. So there's so much joy in this aspect of creation. And also there's on Deneb with these fairies, there's a special initiating school where the fairies learn the language of the plants and what their healing properties are. And that's really all about learning, energies and frequencies and signatures, because there's a energetic signature within plants, as you well know, that can heal anything as long as you know how to match up the energies. But that's being learned here on the fairy part of us. And the other thing we need to realize about Deneb, what it's trying to tell us, and this is asking us, believe it or not, Saturn is asking us to remember the inner child, because that's very much a part of the whole fairy being. Remember to be joyful and rejoicing about life, because there's infinite creativity, full joyability, and we can reenact this, and we can work it out in our more dense matter state with ritual celebrations. So these are all the messages of Deneb, and Deneb is a reminding ray. It's reminding us that as humans, we had made and promised to keep an alliance with the nation of the elves and fairies. In some part of our souls, we've taken responsibility for the forests and the existing plants, for the protection of nature, for the living environment and the animals, and essentially that's Gaia, and that's our body. And also, since fairies are healers of the inner child, that's part of our task as well. This is what we're being reminded of now.
It's very 5D, right, Leslie? I mean, the fifth dimension is all about creativity, and the inner child is one of the best ways to access that, because the child is endlessly creative if given the space to. And
Right.
yeah, we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but let's continue.
Right. And I'm not just, I won't read through this, but this is the very last paragraph in the Bird Nation. And it's so beautiful because it's saying, let's breathe together and take all these experiences, take what we've just heard about Deneb, and really all the galactic awakening that's there for us through these different stars, because they're portals, they're real worlds, and we have aspects of our soul living there. So take them deep into ourselves and let it touch our hearts, let it awaken our purity as the inner child. And just dropping to the bottom, Gaia needs our consciousness, needs us to take responsibility. We know that, but we need to remember the promises we made to the fairies and elves specifically to preserve the sacredness of life, so that our beautiful planet has this opportunity for rebirth through the pathway of ascension, which is what this cosmic rearrangement wants to bring to us. And I want to bring, that's the only star on Saturn, but I do want to bring up that Fomalhaut is a star that actually it's out right now because we just went into Pisces. And Fomalhaut is a star, it's the cradle of the unicorn nation. And unicorn nation is the aspect of ourselves that are creators, that dream, that can then manifest dreams into creation. So it's the creative aspects of ourselves. And Fomalhaut is actually coming through the sun now from the 21st of February to the 26th. It's at 412 of Pisces, but it's got an orb of 4.5. It's a seventh dimensional star. So I'm bringing this out because this is just one off Saturn. But before we went into Deneb, we had Saturn coming into the Piscean energy with this stellar influence. And that, we talk about Piscean energy being different and we speak of it in astrological terms, but now we're adding another layer to it by understanding the stellar influences that are happening here. Because as a seventh dimensional star and a cradle of creation, Fomalhaut is the absolute epitome of the beauty that everything can creation can be, as far as physically, smell, sounds. And on Fomalhaut, there's a huge kind of golden plasma lake that is, you can lay your light body on, and it's like a screen into all the galaxy, and here's all the dreams of every aspect of creation. And Fomalhaut, you could kind of call command central, maybe of synchronicities, because it's the part of ourselves or our higher consciousness that is looking at these dreams and seeing if they're aligned with divine will is going to put the prompts out, the synchronicities out that will help the dream be realized in these condensations of matter in different the lower dimensions. It will also, though, we have our dreams and we think, oh, I just need this, this, and this. But from that level of ourselves, we may look at it and go, I'll give you that dream, but it's not going to go like this, this, and this. It's going to go a little bit circular because the way you're dreaming it doesn't have divine will or your highest intention of the light in mind. And Fomalhaut is also a place of, we can think of it as a place of answering questions or asking questions too, because it is all about creation. And we can literally have relationships with these stars. So if you have dreams and you want to actualize them, but you're thinking about them and you're not sure how to set them up, you can literally just go into meditation with Fomalhaut and ask questions because you're asking that part of yourself, that part of creation for some response. So just basically, I want to say, in summary, we're down to our sun, all those stars, which are infinite, incredible worlds, Gaia as our body, us as humans, and we're wanting all this to come into a new creation cycle of co-creation. So that's all I really have to say about
Well, Leslie,
Saturn
I've made quite
Cazimi.
a few notes and I'd like to bring a few threads together in conclusion here with everything that you've shared, because I think it's all, as always, incredibly on point, pertinent, and very potent. And we didn't focus so much on Fomalhaut there. It's probably known to a lot of our astrology audience anyway, for a variety of other reasons. But what we're getting is two stars, and both of them have a creative energy. The unicorn nation, of course, of Fomalhaut is very much about the creative energy, but we've also got the fairy star of Deneb, which is reminding us about our innate connection to nature. And it's in nature that we get to witness the fairies. And children particularly can see the fairies, but we can also see the fairies. I can see the fairies, but it requires either to have a certain type of coding, or that you've cleared your field and you are open to seeing them. That's a big part of many things here on planet Earth, is that if you say they don't exist, well, then they won't exist, because that's quantum. And spirit hears, I don't want that to exist, so then it won't show you that. However, if you go more like the other way, like me, which is like, well, I believe anything can exist and I'm open to seeing it. So whenever you want to show it to me, show it to me. So, that's how I've worked with my intentions. But when we come to dreams, whenever I'm making a prayer about something that I want to happen, I always add the disclaimer, please let this unfold in the most appropriate of ways for my own highest good or the highest good of the client or the collective or whatever I'm doing. Because spirit has a much bigger imagination even than I do, which is quite big, but spirit's imagination is a lot bigger than mine, and spirit can make things happen in an even more magical way than even I can imagine. And I've had that proven to me over the years repeatedly. And so I've learned to accept that, okay, I sort of know what my divine will is. I know the container that I'm heading towards, but how the container is colored in is up to either my free will, in which case I can get it wrong and have done plenty of times, or I can hand it over to spirit and say, all I need to do is keep showing up, understanding the direction of travel that I'm going in, and allow you to direct me through the synchronicity, so that I'm never really sure what's going to happen next, but I do know where I'm going. So it's almost, again, the paradox of like, I don't know anything about anything, but I do know where I'm going because I need to know where I'm going, but I don't know how I'm going to get there or even exactly what it's going to look like when I get there. But I have a rough idea of where the end point on my map is, because there is no end point either. It's just another stop on the journey to somewhere else. So what I'm understanding from this Cazimi is everything that you've shared wonderfully makes so much sense. But we've also got this energy of reconnection to nature, but of a rebirth. And it seems to me that the rebirth is very much about the energy of nature and of the trees. And so what I want to share in this final piece is that, interestingly, when we came to putting out the oak immersion, which is going to be starting on the 28th of February, you can sign up, the details will be in the show notes. But we, in our minds, as in me and Bella, weren't thinking to do anything until maybe around the eclipse or the equinox or something. And as always, we checked in and we doused on the dates, and it was very, very clear. No, the oak wants to start an immersion on February the 28th. And we're like, okay, not really sure why. And then we started to look into the astrology, and the first thing that burst out was the Saturn Cazimi. And the first thing that dropped in for me then with Saturn and the oak was about time and chronos. So another little piece to share is that the oak is connected to dandelion, and dandelion is the master of synchronicities. He is a time lord. And we can say that the oak is like dandelion, but his uncle or his big brother or something. But these two are intimately connected. It's very, very similar energies. We've covered dandelion before, right, Leslie? And so what I'm understanding is that the oak in this moment is coming to show us how to hold a very true, divine-willed integrity and intentional structure for ourselves that allows us to be sovereign, but still interconnected, but not codependent or being manipulated or attached, because that's not sovereign. And this is very, very difficult for humans to understand because we have so many attachments, and most of them are actually even subtle. Attachments to people, attachments to lifestyle, attachments to convenience. Some of those attachments bleed over into addictions, addictions to the devices, addictions to box sets, to Netflix. The list goes on and on and on. But whilst we still have those in our life and they're somehow controlling us in some way, we're not sovereign. And that is why I think the oak tree has stepped forwards, because in many ways it is the harbinger of sovereignty for us. But we have to understand what sovereignty is, first of all, and so that we have some idea where we're going towards. And I think that's what you've given us today, is a sort of a benchmark or a blueprint, Leslie, of how we can work with both the energy of Saturn and the sun. But I also think Mercury too. Mercury is also connected in some ways to the oak, which we're going to find out about during the immersion. But what I would like to suggest is that with the energy that we're currently in, of the current Mayan wave school, which on the 22nd of February is still in the white mirror, with the energy of Chiron and Pluto at work, we are being every one of us is being asked to look at shadow. Because in order to ascend to the new structure of the fifth dimensional consciousness, there is no place for shadow. It literally cannot exist in that frequency. So we are in that spell at the moment, but then on the 28th of February, we move to the next Mayan wave spell, which is about magic. And what I have come to understand from my own medicine work this week is that in order to move forwards, we need to transform very, very quickly. Now we're almost out of time, our shadow, but that shadow is actually a latent, potent, energetic, kinetic force that if we can transform into the higher notes, gives us a new burst of energy, which will fuel our transformation with the assistance of the oak into a new structure that will still be us. I'll still be Davyd, you'll still be Leslie, hopefully, but somehow we'll be different because we'll be, as you've been saying before, Leslie, free of the lower emotional situations in the astral planes. The lower astrals is where the human emotions reside. It's where the attachments to those emotions reside. It's where all of that lower frequency resides. But what I can say from my own journeys this week is that the astral plane is clear. It's been cleared. And if we can just get past the toxic junk and gunk that is in our field, particularly from some of the medications of the last years, if we can get beyond that, then the only thing that's left to confront is our own shadow. And if we can transform our shadow, we can really shift frequencies super quickly. And what I've been shown is that very, as you said, Leslie, very quick, very direct action will have profound effects in a way that we've never experienced before, because we're now at a point where the energy is so fast and so quick that we're heading very quickly to that fifth dimensional instant manifestation consciousness. So if I want to strongly decide that I'm going to remove all of my shadow in the next 5 days with the intentions and the steps that my allies are showing me, I can do that. We can all do that. But if we choose not to, then we're on a different timeline, because the timeline of Earth and the sun is the one that we've been talking about today. And we have been very, I think, courteously invited along with these beings to go on that journey with them. But it's our choice. And if we choose not to, then, well, we're going to go somewhere else, because that is where they are going. And it's not like we say, hey, we're going to go on a journey with you, but we're going to dictate where you're going, because we kind of like it over here in this lower frequency stuff, because we can't be bothered to spend time looking into ourselves and working on ourselves, or we're too wounded or too traumatized to be even able to see the shadow, then it's going to be difficult for us. So what I believe, Leslie, to wrap up everything I just said, is that we're being offered an opportunity to be with our inner child, to be creative, to be with the fairies, to remember our connection to nature, to remember our innate connection to the trees as the structure that we can start to inhabit moving forwards. We can become like the fifth dimensional consciousness of the oak, or even the sixth, seventh, eighth dimensional consciousness of the oak and other trees. And that is the choice that we are being presented with.
I concur, and I will add to that, we're also being asked to embody the understanding of our stellar aspects of our being.
Yes.
But we need to then stand strong, like you're saying, in a very way we can imagine, material, with the oak, I mean, with an actual thing. Because stars can be a little obtuse, especially as we're learning them. And we do really need to learn this, because I can even look at the code now, and I can look at what's on Jupiter, and I can look on what Uranus, and it's like, okay, the biggest cosmic reflections of our shadows are going to be presenting themselves on the next Cazimis. But I think our sun bravely went to Pluto and then Saturn. He said, okay, I'm going to do this. And effectively, that's us too, right? We said, maybe the sun is an aspect of our higher selves. I'm going to do this. And what you just said is the same thing. We have to be resolute, and we have to really understand. I mean, if you're just standing on the third dimension, seeing the material stuff come at you, it's a tsunami of despair. And I understand that. But it's like almost like we're being asked to build this bridge of consciousness so we can be the fullness of who we are and work it out with our dreaming, with our consciousness, but knowing that it's really real, like that the Fomalhaut, that the Deneb, that there are agents with us that can turn our dreams into reality. So I think we're both saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know my glyph is Walker, number 13, bringing heaven down to earth. One of my mission codes here is to be able to communicate my multidimensional experiences to those people who don't have those experiences, because ultimately, if we're going to become consciously aware of our multidimensional self, that actually means being aware of those multidimensional aspects of ourselves. Now, I work with plant medicine and have done for many years as a way of accessing those realms and becoming comfortable in the realms beyond the 3D. I'm fully aware that the majority of the population has not done that. So in that regard, I have a little bit of an advantage. But what I can say is that from those journeys that I take, I can bring back certain information and share it, which is exactly what is written in my Antares Code and my astrology. So I'm learning about my own job here on earth and why I'm good at certain things. And we all have these gifts. We all have different gifts. They're laid out in our astrology and our Antares codes. And all we are being really guided to do, I think, is remember that divine blueprint that we came in with, and to see where the free will blueprints pulled us left and right and created the shadow. Right. So it's okay. It's all fine. There's no judgment. This is duality. And so it doesn't light and dark, good and bad. It's all the same thing. All we have to do is recognize that and see where the lower frequency stuff is no longer serving us. But we can use that kinetic energy that is trapped for creativity and expansion. And so I'm really actually, even though we're in a tough process collectively, individually, I'm super excited, because if we can maintain the discipline that Saturn and the oak gives us, and say, if you can be disciplined, and every time your shadow wants to come and try to distort what you're doing, if you can see that and take that moment and flip the energy and go and do something positive for yourself, go and draw a picture, go and make a wooden boat or something, anything that's going to turn the energy into something of creativity, you will be able to embrace and reintegrate those shadow aspects of yourself that have fallen through the use of free will.
Right, because if you think that divine will is the intention of the light within us, whenever we've broken from that intention is when we've created shadows, and then we create our patterns around that, and they get stuck. But everything you just said, it's about undoing that and just remembering that it's our friend, the intention of the light. It's not some onerous, punishing father that's saying, you've got to be like this.
Well, no, it's us. In the end, we're dealing with ourselves. And I think that's something that, speaking from experience, has startled me a few times. I'm like, well, why would I want to do this to myself? And it's like, well, it's not exactly you, but it's part of you. And sometimes it's not even a part of us from this timeline. It's a part of us from a part of our cosmic self that is experiencing something else somewhere else in the cosmos, because it's all happening simultaneously. So what I would share as a final thought, that when we're doing this shadow work, working with the energy of Chiron at the moment, who is here to assist us, as we journey through the underworld, Pluto, to lift the shadows into our awareness, what we are being shown is how we can work with this energy and reintegrate all of us, all of Davyd, all of Leslie, not just here on Earth in this 3D moment, but all of me, all of my cosmic self, including all of my cosmic shadow, which turns out was quite a bit, according to my Antares code. And now I've got to experience. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I've been shutting some of these aspects of myself out, but it needs to be reintegrated so that I can be whole. And what do I need to do? The good, light parts of Davyd need to make friends with the not so good, dark parts of Davyd, but with love and forgiveness so that there's no sense of separation. If we are separated from ourselves within ourselves, then the rest of our life is going to be exactly the same because we're fractal. So if we can make ourselves whole by reintegrating all of those shadowy aspects of ourselves from all of our cosmic history with clear intention and say, I now want to be whole, I want to move forwards as a new whole shining being with a new structure that Saturn in Pisces is giving us, that Pluto moving through Aquarius is giving the opportunity to release and transform into, then booyakasha, everybody, we're on the path. And I think that this is how I'm looking at working with this energy right now. It's what I think the oak wants to give us through the immersion. And just to say, myself and Leslie are looking at doing a piece working with the asteroid of Quercus, who is the planetary representation of the oak. And right now, Quercus is sat right on Antares, pretty much. So we're going to have a little bit, hopefully a bit of a deep dive into that during the immersion. But hopefully for today, me and Leslie have found a way to share what we understand is the energy coming through Deneb and through Fomalhaut, but through this Saturn Cazimi with the sun, but also with a bit of the Mercury energy. But it's really about the sun and Saturn and the sun and Pluto and all of these energies that we've been working with these Cazimis. So I thank you, Leslie. Is there anything else you wish to add? Do you think I managed to wrap that up okay there?
You wrapped it up very well. And then I always go to something. I just went to the thought that this is really the divine. We are agents of the divine knowing itself in a new way. So
wow.
We'll leave
we are
it.
agents of the divine, learning to know ourselves.
No, the divine is knowing itself, getting to experience its own mind and its ideas through us, because the divine is inert and we're agents of it. So we're agents of divine, and this whole process is very intelligent and very interactive. And whatever we need to do to be strong in this process, I always get my strength by getting, increasingly large containers. So but then I have to stay here too. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. We've gone on again, but if you've stayed, I appreciate your taking this all in. I think it's important.
It is really important. And again, just to re-emphasize, as we move forwards, we're going to need to be strong. And the oak is very much one of its core energies is of strength. And also the mantra, I am enough. Right. And, as we said, we're currently still in the wave spell of the white mirror. So we are mirroring back to creation, its own creations, because we are part of that. And that's a beautiful thing. The creative source gets to see how all of its creations are played out through us. And so we are divine agents of the creative spirit. And I think that we can take the responsibility of what we want to mirror back to our creator and say, hey, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I'm going to be the best that I can now, because you gave me the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest relationship we could have, right?
Well, I mean, in my current bird brain understanding, I'm not sure what could be bigger than that, but who knows? Maybe that's an evolutionary cosmic history codes episode for 2999 or something. I don't know.
You see, when we get into that level of relationship, the love, the trust, the flow, I mean, that's the fifth dimension, sixth dimension. If we're truly going to live on that, and you've alluded to this, I think we're only beginning to fathom the level of surrender of all these layers of habit. Anyway, I think we should stop this now because we've made our point.
So hopefully everybody, you have got the point. Me and Leslie have tried our best to elucidate our understandings of this through the astrology and through the cosmology. We hope you've enjoyed the Cosmic History Codes. We'll be back again very soon. There are a bunch of Cazimis coming up this year, and they seem to have caught our attention, but maybe we'll do some other shows in between. But if not, hopefully we'll see you on the Oak Immersion, where we're going to be getting very much into all of the things we've talked about and more, and why the Oak is here at this time. And we're going to be taking transmissions from herbalists, astrologers, cosmologists, but even a 26th dimensional ascended master, Zach, is going to be joining us too for a special transmission from the cosmos and the celestial aspect of the oak itself, and very much in line, very much with what Leslie has just shared here. So again, we're creating the containers for ourselves, but the container this time is being created really with the assistance of the oak tree and Saturn and the sun. So this is a huge joint effort, everybody. We're all in this together. All of the beings are all working together. Why? Because we all have the same aspirational hope, which is the same as our sun, that we are now going to come to a new space and live a different type of existence, which is new for all of us. Ho to that, everybody. Thank you, Leslie, as always, for a wonderful presentation. We'll see you all again very soon for another episode of the Cosmic History Codes. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.